Okay, hi, it's me and my new microphone. I want today to talk about something that is a personal struggle for me when I'm writing, which is how to describe characters. I think that this is something that, as you get better as a writer, it's just like one of the many things that become subconscious and come to you naturally, and you don't have to like do so much thinking about it. But I think when you're a new writer, there's sort of a tendency to fall on cliches, not look beyond the bounds of like a very simple like way of describing someone, like they have blonde hair and blue eyes. Like that's not a very interesting way to describe someone, and it's also not telling us anything about the character. It's kind of lazy. Of course, like these are things that you do when you first start writing, and then you get better and you know better and you read more and you see what is out there. The most astute descriptions of someone are not simply descriptions, they're doing work on a story level as well. And I'm gonna pull some examples of that today. I've kind of come up with 3 ways of thinking about characterization that are just 3. There's hundreds of ways to characterize, and you could just keep, if you open books that you love right now, you'd find different ways. But today I've come up with 3 that I wanted to share. So the very first thing I thought about when I started thinking about making a video on this topic was the idea that because there are so many bad ways to describe people, so many really lazy ways to describe people, I think it's helpful to like first start with making a list or like sort of like a philosophy for yourself about how you're going to describe people, and what you're comfortable doing and what you want to avoid doing. So for me, I don't like when a description of a person is just their physical appearance. Like I don't like when it's like she was beautiful with blonde hair and blue eyes or whatever it is. Like I don't like that kind of description. I'm much more drawn to vibe descriptions, like what is the impression that person leaves on the people around them. So for me specifically, that means that I don't want to describe someone by their body size unless I have a very purposeful reason for doing that, unless that's how the character that I'm writing, the character who is looking at that other character, unless it's how they would describe them, I'm not going to do that. Like if I'm writing in an omniscient narration, I'm not going to use like body size to describe people. I think it's kind of lazy. It's something that's like overused, and often like you see really tropey things done with it, like people of larger body sizes being portrayed as like clumsy or evil or lazy. Like this is something where this has been done. It's not particularly creative. I'm not going to do it. So that's on my list of like, I don't want to do it. Another thing to be aware of is gaze. Like I think because so many of us grow up watching movies, watching TV, there's a tendency to have that male gaze that so often appears in movies and TV in our writing. It can really trickle in. I've noticed this before when I just am writing quickly, and which is, there's room for writing quickly and then going back and making yourself think a little bit more about how you're describing people. But I've noticed that when I write quickly, I tend to like, almost like, especially with women characters, I almost write them as though a man is looking at them. And I think that's just from watching, 90% of the movies that are made today, LOL. So I think it's just when you're writing, be aware of that. Am I objectifying this person for a reason that doesn't make sense? Of course, if you're writing a character where they are seeing that person, they are kind of objectifying that person, that's different. Still should be used with caution, in my opinion, but I think you have to know what perspective am I sitting in right now, and why is that person perceiving that person that way. Those are my 2 major don'ts. I don't use body size as a way of characterizing people unless I'm doing so very intentionally, and I don't use male gaze to describe my characters unless there's a specific reason for me to do that. I'm not going to do those 2 things just as a fallback. And you really shouldn't have just a fallback for how you describe people. But anyway, moving on. Hi. Okay, this is a clip from a later date because when I was recording the initial recording, I deleted accidentally this clip. So I'm just going to re-record it while I'm on the move here. I was basically saying that the first thing
I have noticed about characterization, good characterization, is that it's way more about the vibe of the person than it is about their physical appearance. So it's about the impression they leave on the other characters, whoever's narrating. It's about how they manipulate space in the room. And I'm carrying really heavy books, which is why I'm like panting. Actually, let me show you. Here are all my library books that I'm returning. There's like 12 of them. So like if you can think about when you go to a party, or even like when you're just with a group of friends and someone walks up and they change the vibe, like maybe they have a neutral vibe and they don't really change it that much, or maybe they change the vibe a lot and they make it better. Maybe they make it worse. Maybe they make it just a little more awkward. I think if you can think about that while you're writing characters, especially a character that you really want the reader to focus on and understand, I think that that's what we're looking to write. We're looking to write vibes. So in this Hangsaman, this was my first example, which got cut from my video, LOL. In this Hangsaman example, she's describing, Shirley Jackson is describing the patriarch of the family. She's describing the dad of the main character, and she's sort of describing how the light bends around him, right? Like, and in doing so, she's basically expressing what a powerful figure this is, right? He's a figure who in her life bends the light. He decides which way the light goes, which becomes sort of emblematic of how all the female characters in this story are a little bit repressed by the men around them, particularly the main character, who at the start of the story is sexually abused, and then the story sort of follows her from there and how it affects her. So the first thing to think about, in short, is to think about the vibe. Think about how this person changes the air in the room. Okay, I think with that we can go on to my clips that were shot in the right location.
Another thing I thought about when I was thinking about characters that have an aura is Andre Acimon's Call Me By Your Name, which is a book I love, but also a movie I love, and I recently got to re-watch it on a big screen. If you guys aren't familiar with the story, Elio and Oliver basically fall in love in this story, but the book opens with Elio seeing Oliver for the first time and noticing how he moves throughout the world, how Oliver has arrived at his family's house and already the whole vibe has shifted. There's something so kinetic about this person, and the way that we see it through Elio's eyes is like, it's pretty much a masterclass in how to write a character, in my opinion. Later, the word, the voice, the attitude. I'd never heard anyone use later to say goodbye before. It sounded harsh, curt, and dismissive, spoken with the veiled indifference of people who may not care to see or hear from you again. It is the first thing I remember about him, and I can hear it still today, later. I shut my eyes, say the word, and I'm back in Italy, so many years ago, walking down the tree-lined driveway, watching him step out of the cab, billowy blue shirt, wide open collar, sunglasses, straw hat, skin everywhere. Suddenly he's shaking my hand, handing me his backpack, removing his suitcase from the trunk of the cab, asking if my father is home. It might have started right there and then, the shirt, the rolled-up sleeves, the rounded balls of his heels slipping in and out of his frayed espadrilles, eager to test the hot gravel path that led to our house, every stride already asking which way to the beach. This summer's house guest, another bore. You guys, it's so good. It's so good. It's like actually making me a little emotional how good it is. It's getting me. It's just like describing, I think one of the things that's like so beautiful when you really hit a description is like you get to the essence of a person with a description like this, and you're seeing someone with so much love. And I think that that's something that is just really rare in life, to be seen that well. So when a writer can write something like this, it's like, it's fucking awesome. Anyway, okay. So there's so many things I want to zero in on this about. So immediately, like, I read you 50 lines or something like that. You know who Oliver is. He's this easy, sun-loving, beautiful young man, and he has just entered Elio's life and is going to change it. He starts with what Oliver says, right? This word that Oliver returns to later. He says it every time he leaves during the book. It's like, later, later, later. At the beginning, Elio almost kind of resents him for it. And then by the end, it's this sort of beautiful promise of later, like maybe we actually will see each other later. What I love about this too is that he starts with that later thing, and then he actually goes into what what Oliver looks like. And the description is like watching him step out of the cab, billowy blue shirt, wide open collar, sunglasses, straw hat, skin everywhere. It's not that you can't use physical descriptions, it's just you want to use physical descriptions like this. These physical descriptions are unexpected. There's something a little unexpected. Like saying skin everywhere is a bit of a weird way of saying it, but it works really well because it's lusty. This first page, it probably didn't read like this at first. He basically probably wrote the whole story and knew how Oliver was and what Oliver's journey would be in this story. And then he came back and coded all of it into this first page and showed us who Oliver is in this first page. You're seeing everything. You're seeing his love for the beach. You're seeing the kind of lusty look that Elio is giving him. You're seeing his phrase later, which will come to signify like he and Elio saying goodbye at a later point of the book. So much is packed into this characterization. You get his vibe. His vibe is so vibey. His vibe is like really vibey, you know? Okay, I've said enough on that. I've said enough. The second one that I came up with is that you want to describe a character based on their movement. So movement is such a great way to describe what this character's effect is on people, and then also describe how this character is going to move through the story. Like, are they going to be like Oliver with the espadrilles snapping against the pavement? Are they going to be like the father figure with the light kind of flashing around him? What is that vibe going to be like? An example of this is the beginning of Goodbye Columbus. The first time I saw Brenda, she asked me to hold her glasses. Then she stepped out to the edge of the diving board and looked foggily into the pool. It could have been drained. Myopic Brenda would never have known it. She dove beautifully, and a moment later, she was swimming back to the side of the pool, her head of short-clipped auburn hair held up straight ahead of her, as though it were a rose on a long stem. She glided at the edge, and then was beside me. "Thank you," she said, her eyes watery, though not from water. She extended a hand for her glasses, but did not put them on until she turned and headed away. I watched her move off. Her hand suddenly appeared behind her. She caught the bottom of her suit between the thumb and index finger and flicked what flesh had been showing back where it belonged. My blood jumped. I'm kind of a sucker for showing who someone is, but in this paragraph, you're seeing this man falling in love with Brenda. You're seeing him see Brenda and know that like they're gonna have something. There's gonna be something here, and what happens is Brenda hands him his glasses or her glasses. Brenda hands him her glasses, and then she's like, "I'm going swimming," and there's such a that's such a thing to do with someone you haven't met, right? Like there's like a almost like a familiarity and that exchange that I think is such a smart way of beginning this story. It has an intimacy to it, and you immediately kind of know who Brenda is. She's someone who's assertive. She knows who she is. She's handing him her glasses to hold, and she's gonna swim and have a nice time. There's just something so beautiful about it. How he physically describes her, like the clipped auburn hair held up straight ahead of her as though it were a rose on a long stem. That is so much better than saying she has brown hair. Like, can't we just agree that that's better than saying she has brown hair? You know her vibe through her movement. You know who Brenda is through this movement she's doing. Another example of this is another swimming book. Who would have thought? You guys, the amount of books I have where there are characters swimming is like, you know, it is just what it is. But this is Julia Otsuka, The Swimmers. This is a wonderful book. This book is written in first person plural, which is something Julia Otsuka really loves to do. A beautiful and unique way to write a book, and a very difficult way to write a book. I'm going to read you just the first page and then through the description of Alice, who's our character. She's not really our main character, but she's the character who we're focusing on in the story. The pool is located deep underground in a large cavernous chamber many feet beneath the streets of our town. Some of us come here because we are injured and need to heal. We suffer from bad backs, fallen aches, shattered dreams, broken hearts, anxiety, melancholy, anhedonia, the usual above-ground afflictions. Others of us are employed at the college nearby and prefer to take our lunch breaks down below in the waters, far away from the harsh glares of our colleagues and screens. Some of us come here to escape, if only for an hour, our disappointing marriages on land. Many of us live in the neighborhood and simply love to swim. One of us, Alice, a retired lab technician, now in the early stages of dementia, comes here because she always has. And even though she may not remember the combination to her locker or where she put her towel, the moment she slips into the water, she knows what to do. Her stroke is long and fluid. Her kick is strong, her mind clear. Up there, she says, I'm just another little old lady, but down here at the pool, I'm myself. You know so much about Alice by this description. You know that she has Alzheimer's, but when she gets in the pool, she kind of gets to be the person who doesn't have Alzheimer's, who she was before. She has a fluency in swimming that is home to her in this really terrible time. She's losing her memory every day. It's really good. There's just this simplicity to Julie Otsuka's writing, and she just managed to convey so much about Alice in that like one little description. She's not even describing how Alice looks, right? She's not telling us Alice has blonde hair or whatever. Boring. She's telling us that Alice is a swimmer, and that even though her life is like very difficult right now, she's swimming. She swims every day. There's something about that that's just so much better. There's something so much better. And obviously that's what this whole book is going to be about, is about Alice and her comrades at the underground pool. So yeah, when you're writing your characters, how do they move? What does your character do that makes them feel embodied? What does your character do that makes them feel disembodied? How do they move around a room? How do they pick something up? How do they brush their hair? There's that saying that you need to know how your character does everything. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but I think there's something to knowing, like, if you're going to describe your character, if you say your character is brushing your hair, what does your character do that makes them feel embodied? What does your character do that makes them feel disembodied? How do they move around a room? How do they pick something up? How do they brush their hair? What does your character do that makes them feel embodied? What does your character do that makes them feel disembodied? How do they move around a room? How do they pick something up? How do they brush their hair? Stroke looks like, how the sunlight hits them, whatever it may be. You're telling us so much more than that. When you tell us someone has blonde hair, you're only telling us that they have blonde hair. Okay, next. The third thing that I wanted to talk about today. Another really wonderful way of getting in with a character is to describe an artifact that they love, or something that is an object, like a precious object to them, and kind of build your character description around that. I see this constantly. It is like such a it's such a useful trick, and when done correctly, it is quite effective. And I actually have recently come across it in this book, which I'm reading now from the library. It's The 10-Year Affair by Erin Sommers. It's really good. I'm halfway through it, so I don't know if I can recommend it yet, but it's quite good. Her writing is like really good. The basic premise of the book is that this woman who is married with 2 kids meets this guy who's also married with 2 kids at basically like a baby group in their town. And they start having this imaginary affair. Like, it's not really a real affair. It's kind of a fake affair that's happening in her head. So you're kind of fluctuating between seeing her in real life and seeing her in this imaginary affair. But this is how Sam, who is the man who she's having her quote-unquote affair with, this is how he's described. Cora met Sam at a twice-weekly baby group in their small town. They sat on blue plastic mats in the back room of an overpriced children's clothing store. Their infants squirmed in front of them on sheepskins. The room smelled like breast milk and baby heads, and cruciferous vegetables boiled down to weakened mealy fibers. One mom had brought in a Tupperware container and was trying to feed her 10-month-old. The baby doesn't want broccoli, said Sam. He had a toothpick stuck to his lower lip. His mouth was sexy. The toothpick was not. He offered one to Cora. She took it so she could touch his hand. It tasted like cinnamon. Of all the available affections, this one was openly oral, wholly about his lips and tongue, either keeping them busy or drawing attention to them. So which was it? She asked him. So this is quite an effective characterization, in my opinion. You're seeing that she likes this guy, right? Like, she's attracted to him, but you're seeing it through this toothpick that she actually finds sort of unattractive. She's like, this is kind of a gross habit to like constantly be chewing a toothpick. Kind of agree. Have to agree with Cora on this one. But what you're seeing is that she's saying that even though he has this really gross toothpick habit, he has a sexy mouth. So she's thinking about his mouth, right? We're learning a lot from about how she feels about him just through that description. She's not saying that she was attracted to him. She's not like, I'm attracted to him. That's boring. She's not saying he's handsome and he has long hair and he is muscular. That's boring. Instead, she's fixated on this toothpick and the mouth behind the toothpick. And she's bold enough to ask him whether it's to keep his mouth busy or to draw attention to his mouth. So we're learning so much in these first two paragraphs, and that is through character description. It's quite effective. And the toothpick reappears constantly throughout this book. It is like Sam's number one thing. When I hear toothpick, I think Sam. That's what you want with good characterization, I think. All right, thanks so much as usual for listening. Let me know what your literary description icks are, and also let me know in the comments if there's like specific topics you want me to think about. Of course, like I'm always just like thinking about these things, coming up with theses, philosophies, but I think what's so great about all these topics is they're endlessly explorable. I'll probably feel totally different about character descriptions in a few years. Yeah, but anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!